Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast, and after a long time in a long-expected party, it's time for something new this series. As I take a break from poetry on Fridays this series, we're going to bring it in here as I read through and discuss the poetry in The Lord of the Rings. Now today, we're going to start with a song that first appears not in The Lord of the Rings, but in The Hobbit, The Road Goes Ever On. Before I read the version from The Hobbit, I want to include the paragraph before, because I think the context is really important. As all things come to an end, even this story, a day came at last when they were in sight of the country where Bilbo had been born and bred, where the shapes of the land and of the trees were as well known to him as his hands and toes. Coming to a rise, he could see his own hill in the distance, and he stopped suddenly and said, "Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea. Over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows and trees and hills they long have known." Now at this point, the verse, as lovely as it is about generic roads, not the road. And it's more about the places that the roads go. And they're all places of nature: rocks, trees, caves, streams, snow, flower, mountains, all of that. In The Lord of the Rings, some 60 years later, as Bilbo leaves Bag End for the final time, he sings a single stanza version of the song. "The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road is gone, and I must follow, if I can, pursuing it with eager feet, until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then, I cannot say." Now we've gone from the generic roads go ever, ever on, to the specific the road goes ever on and on. And also in the first one, note that the feet were wandering. They weren't necessarily aimless or anything like that, but seemingly without the kind or at least level of purpose that we see here. Here, Bilbo's feet are eager. There is a specific, a desired goal to be accomplished eagerly, even if it is just to get to Rivendell, though I'm not sure that's all that Bilbo means here. I also think it's interesting that while in the Hobbit version, the roads went by all those places in nature, here, the road goes someplace that Bilbo doesn't know. I cannot say. Now, before we get to the final version from Bilbo, I should note that Frodo recites this last verse almost precisely on the Hobbit's way to Crickhollow, but he changes one key word. His feet there are not eager, but weary. Now, that's interesting, because we'll see Bilbo using the same weary in his final version, but he's 130 years old, and the weariness is justified. Frodo at that point is still young and has barely begun his journey when he says his feet are weary. But it's old Bilbo who I want to look at one more time as we read through the final version that he murmurs before falling asleep in Rivendell. He says, "The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin. But I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet." This final version is lovely. Bilbo's journey is over. His paths and errands from the previous version have indeed been met, and Bilbo knows it's time, or almost time, to go to his well-deserved rest. His feet, which were once merely wandering and then were eager, are now, quite understandably, weary. And the destination of the road now? It's no longer the geography of the wide unknown world, rock, tree, caves, streams, flowers. And it's not even the abstract philosophical concept of some destined fate. It is now simply the lighted inn, the place much like home, where he can get his evening rest, his meal, and sleep. Let others now follow the road. Bilbo's time is done, his reward well earned. And while it's also another indication that Bilbo's traveling time is through, weary feet heading towards an inn, I can't help feeling that it's a bit like a metaphor for his eventual passing to the west. Now, for more on-the-road verses, check out the Prancing Pony podcast all the way back to episode 35, which was our Tolkien Reading Day episode for 2017. Or more recently, episode 328, when James Tauber and I looked at this last version of the song in many partings. Folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. We're going to continue looking at the poetry in The Lord of the Rings for the rest of Series 7. Next week, the fire on the hearth is red. Check out patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times to see what we're doing on Fridays this series. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.